Let's get right to the latest out of Ukraine. And breaking news this morning, Ukrainian officials announcing a new temporary ceasefire with Russia to allow more civilians to escape. The two countries agreeing to 6 routes out. This after a similar effort yesterday allowed thousands of people to get out of the city of Sumy. Despite this pause in some areas, overall, Russia is intensifying its attacks on Ukraine with devastating effects on the people still in the country. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky saying relentless shelling has killed hundreds of civilians, including more than 50 children. And along the western border of Ukraine, the humanitarian crisis is growing. More than 2 million refugees have fled the violence, according to the UN, many of them forced apart from their loved ones.
The hardest part to understand that we are now safe here and our friends and family are not safe.
The British Defense Ministry says Russians have closed in on several key Ukrainian cities, but Ukraine forces have kept Russian troops out of the capital of Kyiv. And a defiant President Zelensky, speaking to British lawmakers yesterday, echoed the words of another wartime leader, legendary Prime Minister Winston Churchill.
We will fight till the end at sea, in the air. We will continue fighting for our land, whatever the cost.
Here at home, President Biden is moving to ban U.S. imports of Russian oil and is sending 2 Patriot missile batteries to Poland to support NATO allies. But the U.S. rejected an offer by Poland to transfer custody of Soviet-era fighter jets for delivery to Ukraine. There's a lot to get to this morning. We have a team covering it all, including NBC News White House correspondent Carol Lee. We're going to start in Ukraine, in the western city of Lviv, with NBC News foreign correspondent Molly Hunter. So, Molly, Ukraine said it evacuated 5,000 people from Sumy yesterday. This morning, the government has agreed to a ceasefire with Russia along 6 humanitarian corridors. So how are the evacuations going today? Is the ceasefire being observed?
Hey, Joe, good morning. That's right. So we've heard from the Ukrainian side, from the Red Cross, that confirmation, as you mentioned, that 5,000 civilians got out of Sumy. That is not nearly at the numbers that humanitarian organizations want to see. So we are now looking at 5 different humanitarian corridors, including out of Sumy again, and that southeastern city, Mariupol, which we've been talking about so much. In addition, a 6th route that includes 5 suburbs of Kyiv that actually goes into the center of Kyiv. Now, the ICRC is actually the one brokering this talks, is on hand in all of these cities to try to open up those humanitarian corridors. The problem, Joe, all week and over the weekend is that the Russian shelling has not stopped in the exact places where civilians are known to be evacuating. Joe?
So, Molly, I want to focus more on Kyiv and the situation in and around there. We know the region is seeing heavy fighting. Are we getting closer to a potential conflict in the capital itself?
Yeah, Joe, when you look at a map, it is no mistake that the Russians are shelling Sumy very heavily. They have been shelling Irpin very heavily, where our colleague Richard Engel has been, where civilians have been trying to evacuate. It's been really dramatic pictures. Those are strategic routes into Kyiv. And so as the Russian shelling increases, those are also why humanitarian corridors are being talked about in those areas. Now, we know from the Pentagon yesterday, a senior defense official says that the Russians are now trying to get in through a 3rd access point to Kyiv. As of now, though, that convoy that we've been talking so much about, it's 40 miles long, 15 miles away from the city, hasn't made that much progress, Joe.
And Molly, you also mentioned Mariupol. It is one of the hardest hit cities in Ukraine. What is the humanitarian situation like over there right now?
Joe, it's devastating, and we've been talking to MSF, Doctors Without Borders, who has staff there, the ICRC, the International Committee for the Red Cross, as we mentioned, who's brokering and facilitating these humanitarian corridors. They have staff on the ground. Now, according to the Red Cross, more than 200,000 people are in dire need of getting out. They have been living without electricity, without water, without heat. It is completely unlivable. The latest on that evacuation is that 8 trucks, 30 buses filled with humanitarian aid, Joe, were going into the city yesterday. We heard reports that there may have been an incident, there may have been Russian firing on that convoy. The idea was that once that humanitarian aid, badly needed humanitarian aid, got into the city, that civilians would then be able to load onto those trucks and buses and get out. And Joe, I just want to say anecdotally, as you mentioned, I'm in Lviv, in the western part of the country. We have been meeting refugees all week now, talking to them about where they have been fleeing from. We haven't met anyone from Mariupol. And I'm sure, look, I'm sure people have gotten out and made it to the west of the country. I haven't met anyone from Mariupol.
And that speaks volumes about perhaps how hard it is to get out of that city right now. Molly Hunter in Lviv. Molly, thank you so much.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.